Hello, everyone, and welcome to our April edition of our 3T&3 series of our third Tuesday and 3 live online events. I'm Alan Falcon, CEO of Cumulus Global. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, busy week, to join us here live today or to be watching this as a recording on demand. Today's topic is pick, mix, or match Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. And really the reason we picked this topic for this month is we've been seeing an increase in the number of companies we work with and prospects who are already on Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. And after being there, sometimes not too long, but in many cases, several years, if not many years, are reconsidering if that's the right platform for them. And so, several years ago, I went back and looked. We had a surge of this type of interest about 4 or 5 years ago for folks who were on one of the platforms for 3 to 4 years before that, thinking, things have changed in my business. Am I still in the right place to be most productive, most secure, most affordable as we look forward? So before we dive into the topics today, just a quick reminder that the audio is muted to prevent any background noise for getting in. If you look to the right of the presentation, you'll see a Docs tab. We have a couple of related resource links. Today, those 2 links are 2 assessments we offer related to the decision of whether or not to stay with 365 or Google Workspace, make a switch, or if you're still on premise or some other service and you're wondering which one to go to, we offer assessments that help you determine that. And as part of the follow-up of this message, we'll be sending you a promotional code where we're going to waive the fee for those assessment works. And as a thank you for you joining us here today. So if you have any questions, also in that window, you can see there's chat box and Q&A. If you hit over to the Q&A section, feel free to ask a question at any time throughout the session. And as I mentioned, we'll do a follow-up email message, usually within 24 hours, that gives us a chance to process the video and get it up online and viewable to you on demand and also for sharing. And so we always ask you do it. As always, this is one of the many resources we offer. And so, as I mentioned, we're getting a lot of interest, and we're actually seeing a significant increase in the number of companies who are on Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace and are interested or have actually decided to move to the other platform. Now, while we're a Google Premier partner, we're also a Microsoft partner. We handle both, and so we certainly do all these migrations back and forth on a regular basis. Currently, it's almost a third of our migration requests and the projects we're seeing. And so it's a significant increase above what's typical. And there's some industry factors happening. We see AI playing a role in this as well. So we thought it'd be good to step back and discuss what are some of the strategic differences, because the 2 platforms come from very different places. Next is what are the pros and cons, things you have to think about if you're going to make this decision. And then there's some external factors to consider that might guide you as well. And that's sort of looking beyond the immediate platform and even a little bit beyond your business to what the meaning of this type of a shift or a change might come into play. And so with that, the biggest difference between Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace is the underlying model. Google Workspace is a cloud first and foremost model. Your web apps are full function. You have very limited desktop apps and access. And that really comes through Drive for desktop. There are app versions, basically dedicated browser versions of Meet and Chat and some of the other utilities. But you're fundamentally, and you do have offline capabilities with some significant caveats and what you can't, will and will not be able to do. But fundamentally, you're in Google Workspace, you're expecting to be internet connected almost all of the time and functioning through those web browser apps. The Microsoft model is extremely different. Microsoft is a hybrid first model. Makes perfect sense because Microsoft came from a 100% on-premise environment and ecosystem. And so the app functionality of your Microsoft 365 apps, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, are limited in their capability and their function. To get the full capability of Microsoft 365, you really need those desktop apps in place. And the environment's really good in syncing your on-premise with your cloud environment. You do have the OneDrive client that facilitates that and connects the local disk space on your workstation or your laptop up to the cloud as well. and can do that, but you're really expecting to be installing software on preferably a Windows device, although Microsoft has become extremely agnostic as far as supporting iOS, Android, and Mac OS environments. There's some other differences as well. Now, Microsoft 365 really is designed to be an integrated ecosystem. It includes the apps and that are downloadable, except for the lowest end license, which they tell you you're limited in your capability. It has detailed native integration with a limited suite of third-party apps, Slack, Salesforce, some others. And then Microsoft also has an integrated ecosystem with line of business tools in the operating system. So you have Windows 365, the subscription version of the professional edition of Windows that gives your Microsoft 365 administrator the ability to manage desktops and the operating system and what you're doing locally, as well as Dynamics 365, which is a suite of business management, financial, operational, sales and marketing, CRM tools, various SKUs, various options that fully integrate with the identity management and the ecosystem and the backend tenancy. And of course, Microsoft 365 integrates pretty seamlessly with the Azure environment and apps and services and systems you may be hosting there as well. Workspace, it's more of a best of breed ecosystem. We're going to include features versus apps for these other capabilities. The integration isn't with highly integrated, strategic partners. It's with thousands of apps that have been integrated through SAML or OIDC authentication methods. And the only expectation is that ideally you're using a Chrome browser or a Chromebook or Chromebox with a Chrome OS on it. Google does not do line of business apps when it comes to the productivity environment. Yep, you can argue that Search Console and Google AdWords and Analytics are line of business apps. I don't disagree with you, but it's not the same as having an accounting system or a CRM tool. Google sort of says, hey, we're going to provide this infrastructure, your communication, your collaboration. We're going to provide some pretty decent identity management and security services. And hey, you want a CRM system? There are hundreds of web-based CRM systems. Pick it. We'll simplify the login. We'll give you that SSO if you want. And many of them will do data integration through APIs. That's great. You need a project management tool, pick the best of breed for your need. It'll integrate in. It's a very different approach than sort of Microsoft's core desire or function and how they work with their customers. There are a number of things also we look at. We sort of look at the value add apps. And so depending on the Microsoft 365 package you're getting, particularly if you're at the business tier, it's including things like Planner, Power BI, Power Apps, Flow, which is Power Automate now, and Bookings, right? And Google Workspace has some equivalents to this, but they're not apps per se. In some cases they are if you pay for an upgrade, but they're really tools that are included in the ecosystem. So Google Tasks lets you track tasks, set deadlines, and even add them or track them on your calendar. But Planner is actually a full planning tool where you can have different tasks, sequences, dependencies, expected durations. You can coordinate projects across multiple people with assigned tasks. It's a lot more sophisticated. You don't just get task lists. You can do Gantt charts. You can do, the box technology, the material design with the boxes and the columns, however you see in the tables that you see fit to manage it. Similarly, Power BI is meant to be a robust data cube management, business intelligence tool. Looker Studio gives you access to view and build and visualize data. But again, you have to pay for a different version of the app to get things like data governance, automation, things of that nature. Power Apps, AppSheet's the equivalent. The core is included in the Business Plus, as well as the Enterprise tier licenses, not the lower one. This does give you the ability to script things and, using a spreadsheet and AppSheet, yes, you can build a project management tool from it, just like you can with Power Apps. Flow Guiding workflows is the app scripts tool. Again, app script is a tool. There's some no-code guidance and stuff, but you're really building scripts to automate things, whereas Flow is really meant as a standalone. You can actually build and publish applications using it. Another difference to sort of see the depth, and really, I think probably one of the best examples is bookings. So, Google Workspace through the calendar has appointment scheduling where you can block off time, provide a link publicly that folks can click, and they can look at your availability and pick a time to meet with you. That's great. Microsoft 365, the calendar app, has that as well, but it also has an application called Bookings. And this isn't just appointment scheduling. This is booking with a business. So you're a dog groomer or you run a salon. Bookings lets you put your open hours, define services and how long those services take, assign a standard pricing to those services, and gives people the ability to go in. You can embed it in your website to say, hey, I want to book appointments to get my dog groomed and I want the nails clipped. You can go and say, ooh, I want a grooming with a nail clip. Oh, that's a 30-minute appointment, not a 15-minute appointment. It costs X instead of Y. They can select it. They get confirmation emails. Bookings lets you track whether people show or no show, things of that nature. It's really more of a small business app for managing how you're making appointments with your customers and how you're going to charge them for those. And Bookings can integrate with credit card processing and billing. It can even be set up to do prepayments or deposits, things of that nature. So it's a different level of app versus tool integration when it comes to the ecosystems. That works for some small businesses. For others, it's good to know it's there. We don't really need it. That's fine. It's really about how all it applies to you. Both environments are pretty robust in identity management, and I'm not going to spend an overly long amount of time on this slide in particular because they are pretty compatible. There's some differences here, but they've both come a long way, right? So the feature within Microsoft 365 and the core directory, it's the free version of Entra ID, used to be known as Active Directory, which is really user groups, your basic security. The comparable cloud identity free that's built into Google Workspace or can be licensed separately to manage users who don't have a Workspace account but are part of your ecosystem. It's who are your users and basic login identity and security. Both provide multi-factor, two-factor authentication. In Google, that includes not just two-step verification, SMS and push technology, but also the use of third-party security keys, which are becoming more popular. Single sign-on, unlimited SSO for specific types of users within the Microsoft 365 space. You've got to be, sort of prearranged, pre-integrated systems. Google Workspace takes a little approach. It's unlimited SSO. There are thousands of pre-integrated SAML and OIDC applications, as we talked about there. Things like self-service password resets. Microsoft's more robust because not only can they do it for the cloud users, but if you have Entra ID Plan 1, which is a paid version, then you can also do on-premise password write-back, which means if the email address and password you're using to log into Microsoft 365 is the same one you use to actually log into the Windows machine when you power it up or open the lid, you can self-service and manage those passwords through one system, through the Microsoft 365 core directory. Now, Entra ID P1 is included in Business Premium Edition and the E3 edition. The P2 edition, which has additional security capabilities such as conditional access, is in the P5 edition. I mean, the E5 edition is where P2 is. Google Workspace gives you, in the enterprise tier, gives you conditional access, gives you self-service password reset for all cloud users. There's no support for, I shouldn't say there's no support for native legacy on-premise write-back. Google Workspace does have utility that does let you manage the physical login to Windows devices. It's a utility. It's not I'd say, a robust solution. Some folks think the user interface is a bit dated and old, and it can be a bit to manage, but it is there. Generally, in the Google Workspace environment, if folks want to manage access and control of the physical end user devices, we're bringing in directory management, third-party directory management tools or mobile device management tools that can do that. It's a third-party integration, and that's sort of the gist, right? Microsoft says, oh, we're going to try and provide everything within our suite and with our own add-ons, and Google's like, hey, we're going to do what we're going to do, but we'll integrate and you can bring in the third-party tool that best meets your needs. And which works for your business is something to think about. There's no one right solution for all businesses. Guest and external identities both have free monthly active users. Microsoft has a 50,000 user limit that shouldn't, by any stretch of the imagination, impede most small businesses. The limited visitors is unlimited on the Google side. There are some advanced capabilities there that requires Business Plus or Enterprise tier plans. Again, it's the scope of what you're allowed to do and how you manage those guest and external identities. Privileged identity management, this is important because it really says, hey, I don't want any of my accounts, even my system administrators, to have unlimited access all of the time. Based on a need, I want to have them receive privileged access for specific tasks for a specific window. Entra ID Plan 2 is what's necessary. Now that's included in E5 for every other version of 365. It's an upgrade because you're buying an additional license, and that gives you sort of that just-in-time admin access. The PIM capability in Google Workspace is a little more limited. It's role-based access. There is no native just-in-time PIM, so you're probably here again looking at a third-party product. So again, very similar, very comparable, but in the Google Workspace environment, certain things are going to require a third-party product. On the Microsoft side, to get what you want, you may need to upgrade your license or add on a paid version of Entra ID. So moving on, issue of file fidelity. And what's to say? When we first started working with what's now Google Workspace back in 2007, file fidelity was a pretty significant issue. There were functions in Excel that didn't exist or have a counterpart in Google Sheets. Formatting in Google Docs would get totally lost if you moved it over to Microsoft Word, and you couldn't even try to move things back and forth between PowerPoint and slides. As Microsoft has modernized its code base and as Google has expanded, file fidelity is really not a significant issue unless you're doing extremely advanced formatting and activity in your documents, which is generally we see beyond the purview of the vast majority of small and even enterprise businesses. You'll be able to move files between the environments pretty seamlessly. Something produced in Google Workspace will convert pretty reasonably, pretty accurately, I shouldn't say pretty accurately and reasonably and very quickly into the Microsoft environment. And what you see are two screenshots of actually one of the slides from this deck in the two environments. And you can see that in the index of images to the left, that everything looks the same. Images don't move, text, the fonts are brought in. If they don't already exist, it all happens now in a very smooth way. So if you're worried about file fidelity, you really needn't be, and that's an easy thing to test if you think you have situations of complex or compound documents that might not work well. That's an easy thing to test before you switch one way or the other. I will note, however, that the Google Workspace ecosystem within all of the editors, Docs, Sheets, PowerPoint, have the ability to download or export, if you will, into the comparable Microsoft Office format. In fact, if you sync actual files from Google Workspace to your desktop, that conversion will be automatic. Additionally, you can have Microsoft Office files that you upload into Google Workspace into Google Drive automatically convert into the Google Workspace editor if you want to. You can leave it in the Microsoft Office editor. And in the Google Workspace environment, you can edit using Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides. You can edit those Word Excel, and PowerPoint documents. It's pretty much the same level, if not a little more advanced than the web-only versions and Microsoft 365. But again, you can open something as an Excel file. It'll stay in Excel format. It'll save it back in Excel format. And if you want to do something that you can't do in that interface, you simply say, oh, actually, now I'm going to open this with Google Docs. It'll do the conversion, and you're off and running. And when you're done, you can save it back to that .xls format. Microsoft doesn't have that same level of interoperability. Not surprised. Microsoft was the big player. Google was the up and coming. It was in Google's interest to interact with Microsoft ecosystems. Microsoft isn't as highly motivated, if you will, based on historical market share. That's fine. We do find a lot of folks who were hesitant about moving to Google Workspace because even though they prefer many aspects of it, they're worried about interacting with people who only work in the Microsoft ecosystem. The reality is I can take a Google Workspace doc, and from inside that document, say file, email this to someone as an attachment in Microsoft DocX, the Word format. And they'll read it, they'll find the layout will look the same, the pagination's the same. They'll be able to work with and read that document and work with the document, collaborate. Okay, so that's sort of, there's a lot of aspects to file fidelity to think about. Moving stuff back and forth, again, not a big issue. Sharing things and having them accessible to the other party, also not a big issue. A little less friction, a bit less friction, Google Workspace to Microsoft 365 than the other way around. Now, I'd be remiss if we didn't say the magic word, AI, right? Both the Microsoft and the Google ecosystems include AI, and it's a little bit different. And interestingly enough, we're seeing this as being a pretty significant motivator for folks in the Microsoft ecosystem who are now taking a fresh look at Google Workspace. And I'll sort of go into why that is. And it's sort of the way the features are in, right? So both Microsoft and Google have included a generative AI chat function in their product, in their environment. You've got copilot.office.com, you've got gemini.google.com. And they both provide a secure working environment. The fundamental difference here is that Microsoft's large generative AI investment is really with its investment in OpenAI and ChatGPT. Whereas Google's big generative AI investment that they're integrating with is Gemini AI. And so when you look at the market and you look at the three main players in the generative AI space, it's clearly OpenAI's ChatGPT, it is Claude, and it is Google Gemini. And those are often the big three that are cited as far as what people are using. You can subscribe to all three of those independently of what productivity suite you're working with, which is always good to keep in mind. And there are actually times that Google Workspace clients are also subscribing to Gemini Enterprise. That's a different discussion for another session, another time. But what it does mean is that the level of AI you can get and how you interact is somewhat different in the Microsoft ecosystem and the Google Workspace ecosystem. And so, for example, when we look at the AI in Microsoft 365, when you get into Outlook and Microsoft Word, there are the grammar, the style, and the tone suggestion tools are AI-driven, and that's a great thing. In the Google Workspace, you have that same guidance in Gmail and Google Docs, but you also have Gemini in Google Sheets and Google Slides. And in addition to getting that sort of inline assistance, you also have the ability to use a sidebar, which is a generative AI chat, and can also do things like summarize, identify, rework. You can reference other content you have and bring that in. You can reference information or search information on the public side of the services and bring that in as well. So it's not just sort of the widget or the guidance, the semi-faded text that tries to finish this, that recommends how you finish the sentence or the paragraph, or a spelling or a phrasing suggestion that pops up to simplify your text, which happens to me in Word all the time. It's that plus the more robust set of tools built in to the screen of the editing suite. Data analysis in Excel, you do have basic AI-powered data visualizations and formula suggestions. Sheets goes a bit further. You get automatic table creation, data classification, formula generation with explanations. You can have a text tab that explains how formulas are created. You can also do some macro development as well. Presentations, PowerPoint can automatically generate slide layouts and visual designs. Given the content, that's great. I was playing with it earlier this week for the project I was working on. Slides generate original images, editable brand match slides from simple prompts. So you can ask it to do things and design it. Again, you have that sidebar that gives you that prompt chat capability and chat history to do it. Meetings, interestingly enough, the basic AI in Teams is pretty limited. It's things like background blur and noise suppression, which I never really thought of as AI capabilities. I thought it more as, hey, Bose has been doing noise cancellation and suppression for decades. It's not hard to do it through software, right? Meet has those capabilities, but also the ability to automate note-taking and summaries. So it's easy after a meeting to get that summary, action items, who said what, the tone of the conversation. Again, using AI now rather than straight translation tools, you can do real-time speech translation. That's great if your client base or your employee base is multilingual. And there are some pretty robust studio quality video and audio enhancements. Again, I sort of discount the audio and video enhancements as being AI per se, but certainly the note take, not only having a transcript or recording, but be able to do note taking, use it all the time to generate minutes for meetings, for example. Research tools, Copilot, the additional license, that $20 for business tier, $30 for enterprise tier licensing is needed for research agents. Google Workspace, the Gemini with Google Workspace includes access to Notebook LM, which is a private, secure learning machine and learning model. And so you do get that AI-powered research assistant, and it's your sources. And that can be only your internal sources that you pick and identify. You can also tap in to the internet and the public side of the Gemini service for that information as well. What's nice about it is, in addition to the flash, the quick response, you've got deep research and you've got Nano Banana for image generation. All of the components are there, and you can really create notebooks as a private learning model for your team to use about data that you have access to yourselves that's private and secure, as well as what's relevant for how you're running your business. And so it's a powerful tool. And so you can see there are differences. At this point, interesting that when Copilot first came out, I was like, man, Microsoft's in the lead. Today, I would say the Gemini integration to Google Workspace and the capability there and the breadth, the speed at which Google's moving seems to be very effective for the vast majority of our clients. And it certainly, as I mentioned earlier, attracting people who looked at Google Workspace several years ago, said it's not for us. They're now taking a second look. And a number of folks are moving really because of the way AI is integrated and the fact that the model and the tools they're using within Google Workspace will be the same ones that they subscribe to for additional capabilities outside of Google Workspace, as well as their general AI ecosystem. Moving on, let's talk about pros and cons that you want to think about. And I'm not saying what's a pro and what's a con for each system. Some of it's non-objective, some of it's objective. The vast majority is subjective. And so when we talk about that, what comes to play a lot in this pro and con discussion is personal and team preferences about email tools and editors. We're surprised that close to 30% of our Google Workspace clients have people who regularly use the Microsoft editors and take advantage of the Drive for Desktop syncing feature. And even we've got a percentage that still prefer to use Microsoft Outlook. Now, they're losing capabilities when it comes to filter and labeling and some of the more advanced features that are built into Gmail, but they have a personal preference for the interface. And as long as they can use it effectively to do their jobs, it's hard to force them to switch. You might have partner, customer, and supplier expectations, particularly around communications and collaboration, right? So if your industry, everyone works on Microsoft Office, or your biggest client says, send it to us in this format, you want to be able to do it. And so there, the perception is you know, if they're demanding Microsoft, you have to be in Microsoft. If they're demanding Google, you have to be in Google. I will say it's easier if they're demanding Google that you're in the Google Workspace environment. If that's the norm in your industry or with your most important VIP clients, if they're in the Microsoft space, you can have the workflows set up so that your client never has to really know that you're not using Microsoft Office. The movement, the ability to present information in the Microsoft formats natively out of Google Workspace is greater than the other way, but it can be done. It can work in both. What's your device mix and ownership? That's I did Star Laptops. That's desktops and laptops as well as mobile, right? Google definitely looks towards, if not a Chrome OS device, a Chrome browser on a device. If you're working through it in the Chrome browser, they really don't care what the underlying operating system is. Microsoft has pretty good integration and management and administration across Windows, Android and iOS devices through Intune and mobile device management services and tools you can add on. Google has add-on MDM. There's third parties that work. So really your device ownership and mix and how you're managing your BYODs will come into play. I won't say there's one better than the other. There's slightly different approaches and you'll have a different mix of tools, but it's both doable. It's what's going to work best for you. Security administration, again, Microsoft sort of has still, Entra ID is still fundamentally based on the architecture and the design behind Active Directory. It is designed to go beyond user and groups to help manage devices and wireless network access. We're in the Google ecosystem. Their tool is really about the human identity, and you'll generally integrate third parties if you're going to use that identity to control your Wi-Fi access, or you're going to bring in mobile device management, depending on the devices you want for managing endpoints. And so the other question is, do you need to pick one or the other? Or are you going to mix and match? As I said earlier, we see people who are using Microsoft Office, and we'll have OneDrive configured and SharePoint sites built for document sharing, but they love the Gmail interface, so they're doing email through Gmail. For me, it doesn't make sense. You're outside of the ecosystem, attachments, integrations, things like that are missing, but it's their personal preference. Probably the most common mix and match we see are folks who are running Google Workspace as the platform, and they haven't yet migrated off the Microsoft Office desktop apps, or Outlook are the two that some people still hang on to. That may work for your organization. It may not. More importantly, may not be necessary. And what we found is we've done experiments where we've had customers doing that type of situation, and we'll say, see if an employee will volunteer to give up Office for 30 days and see how it works. And we try to do this early enough in their life cycle, their annual cycle, that employee comes back and says, yeah, we really don't need it. We can plan a migration off from a document and productivity standpoint, get people in a single ecosystem, and avoid the expense of the ongoing license cost for those desktop apps. And that's sort of where the affordability comes into with the productivity and the security. What's going to be most productive, and how does that fit within your budget? Okay, so sort of pros and cons. Moving on, if you're going to switch environments, don't underestimate the migration costs and understand some of the risks. We love it when people migrate either way. We're happy to do it. We're hopefully moving them to the environment that's going to better serve their customer needs, but it's not as simple as shutting one down and starting one up, or just moving the documents over, right? There's a difference between migrating and the way the migration tools work. When you migrate accounts, it's usually all of the data that's owned by the individual user. That's not SharePoint or shared drives. So you need a separate migration process, sometimes a different tool to make that happen. Additionally, you have to be very concerned about what happens with your file permissions. Some of the free or the default tools will bring everything over, but won't preserve the file permission structure or won't let you set up the file permission structure so it fits into it during the migration. And so you need the right tool, the right expertise, and understand what you're trying to achieve. Additionally, if you're running any of the archive e-discovery tools, whether it's Google Vault on the Vault side or the Microsoft tools in the 365 ecosystem or a third-party tool, you need to manage that as part of it. And moving and migrating archives, the tools that do that are generally charging you in 10 gig or 100 gig chunks. It can add up, it can get expensive, it can be time consuming, and you really have to worry about troubleshooting and error reporting on those because those archives are meant to be legally compliant. You don't want to lose data or lose access to data when you transfer. And there's the other little things that come into play within the environment, such as group and shared calendars don't usually move as smoothly as you would think. And it's not uncommon for recurring meetings to get migrated as individual meetings. If you're not careful, if you're not managing it right, we generally recommend recreating those to guarantee that you understand that, hey, our weekly team meeting, I've moved it over. It's now on the calendar weekly, but if I change one, it's not going to change the whole series. It's only going to change that one. It's no longer technically structurally a recurring meeting. Additionally, you have to be careful of how you've integrated identities. And this is really from either system to the other. We see it mostly when people move off of Google Workspace. They move off, they shut down their accounts, and next thing you know, they can't get it. They forgot about Google Analytics account, their Google Keep account, their business's YouTube account. They've lost access to those, and there's a complex and time-consuming, sometimes expensive recovery process to get that back. And we know that you might be using, a Microsoft 365 email address to get into Google Analytics and can be federated login. You got to be careful of that too. So you have to understand what your identities are being used for as far as login, what's integrated, what's just, hey, it happens to be my username. My email address happens just to be the username, to make sure that in the migration, you don't do it. Now, there are ways to protect that and do it. So for example, you can move off of Google Workspace by moving those accounts into Google Cloud Identity. They'll continue to work. You can still log into them. You can still use them to access your other non-workspace Google services, and you can go ahead and shut down that Google Workspace account. Similar capabilities exist coming off the Microsoft side in the other direction. You just have to do the analysis and the planning to avoid that risk becoming a reality. And finally, some external factors, right? We talked a little bit about industry expectations and norms, what you're expected. Does your industry really care? Has that shifted? We find a number of folks who've come to us in the last 10, 12 months or so have said, they would never have thought about moving from 365 to Workspace because their industry was all Office and people were nervous about it. Now, as they're interacting with people, they're realizing a large percentage or reasonable percentage of companies in their industry have made the move, so it's safe for them to do so. Different products, different platforms, different methods for external sharing, collaboration, and compatibility. Understand how that happens and how it works and what it means for guests, and pick the one that's going to work right for you. Line of business applications. It's interesting. We've got folks on Google Workspace where they're using it for email and limited documents. They still have on-premise file servers. They're in industries that require on-premise IT, like manufacturing and distribution. And they'll have line of business applications that all run on Microsoft SQL Server databases on the back end. And they're like, hey, we want to integrate this into workflows and stuff, and with our email system, everything like that. We're like, okay, that's great. In the Google ecosystem, we're going to have to go get third-party tools to access that data, to present it to you, to build the workflows, etc. The 365 environment has Power BI free. You can upgrade that. You've got Automate. You've got those tools and those robust applications there to do it. If a large part of your business and your use of your productivity suite is going to be integrated with line of business applications that are really dependent on a Microsoft environment, that's probably where you want to be. So line of business. On the other hand, if we've got customers who came to us with Microsoft 365 and they're using web-based CRM, they're using a web-based customer support tool, they're using web-based chat services and video conferencing services. And they're like, none of this is integrating really well with 365. It integrates a lot more easily with Google Workspace. They made the move over because the line of business applications fit better with the particular platform. So that's certainly a consideration. And finally, the broader role of Gemini versus Copilot. Do you need to buy the paid version of Copilot? You'll probably need to buy that sooner than you would in the Google Workspace, because Google's built more of the Gemini capability into Google Workspace as part of the fundamental licensing price at the different tiers. You may need to upgrade to get a capability you want, but that's small dollars per user per month as opposed to bringing in another system. As I mentioned earlier, Copilot isn't out in the world as a general purpose generative AI engine, whereas Gemini is. And so the development around video, imaging, chat, memory, learning modules, you have Notebook LM, that's not only part of Google Workspace, it's a standalone app you can license. And then your identity and the system is designed to integrate with Gemini Enterprise, which runs on the Google Cloud Platform, which gives you the ability to create agents and do more of the advanced AI work. On the Microsoft side, Copilot is designed around the 365 environment. At that point, you're getting into Azure-based services or ChatGPT. It's a different type of environment and a different type of integration. I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other. It really depends on what your plans are and how you're going to make that work. So at this point, haven't had any questions come up in the Q&A window, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. And so either I've done a good job presenting and answered questions or gotten you enough to get started thinking, or I've just bored you all off for the afternoon and you'll need some time to recover. In any case, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email address is up on the slide. Better than calling me, I'm not good about picking up the phone or even answering voicemails. Send it to me. You can also just reach out to us in general. Using the bit.ly link or the QR code that's on the screen, you'll have an opportunity to set up an appointment with one of our cloud advisors. We're happy to answer questions, talk, and certainly we can talk about the assessments we do and how we guide folks. And if you need us to look into something in a little more detail, we can do that for you as well. So we welcome you to do that at any point in time. And on that note, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you for joining us here this afternoon. That's when we're recording it, or if you're here on watching this on demand, appreciate you taking the time to do it. Do not hesitate to contact us with any questions, and hopefully check out our resource center. Got lots of great information there as well, papers, other videos, third-party content that we think is useful and bring in, easy access to our blog posts across a wide range of topic. If you have a question that we're not answering there, let us know. We'll do the research, we'll prepare the material, share it with you, and share it with the world. If you have something specific to your business, that meeting with our cloud advisors is the best way to get started. So again, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you at a future event, and we'll see you online in the Resource Center. Have a great day.